Sandtray is a visual form of telling a story that's difficult to tell in any other way. You know, sometimes trauma has people unable to actually voice their story, either because it's too hard to tell, because it's been painful and difficult, or they just don't know how to tell it. So the Sandtray is a way that they can visually tell a story. It's a very strong link between the conscious and the subconscious. So the story that's too difficult for someone to tell comes out in a Sandtray. Sandtray therapy can be used when a client is having difficulty in telling their story for whatever reason. If there's just a blockage in some way and it's just difficult for them to express what it is that's either going on for them currently or something that's happened in the past, if it's important for that to be told. I find in my work with people with intellectual disability that a Sandtray is a fun way for them to try and express what it is that they have trouble telling a story. So I often find people with an intellectual disability use a lot of compliance, in that if I'm just talking to them, they try to give me the answers that they think I want. But if you use the Sandtray, I'm not so involved in that, so that they just tell the story as it is. There's not so much compliance going on there. People with intellectual disability, I don't use a Sandtray therapy any differently than I would with any other client, but it probably is a more literal, they tell the story more literally than people without an intellectual disability. I'd use Sandtray therapy over several sessions to tell a story, because it moves and changes. You probably noticed when Taz made the story in the sand, initially she placed the dog very close to herself and then she moved it halfway down the hill. The stories will grow and change over time, and so starting with the same thing in the next session with Taz, I might use, okay, we do a story with your family, and it would actually be quite different. And that's where the digital photography comes in, is that looking at it again over several weeks, you'll notice a change, and it's actually a very good way of seeing how she's actually changing her attitudes and her relationships because of the way she positions things in the Sandtray. The number of times you would use it would be, depends on the client. Some clients you can get the story in 2 or 3 sessions. Done, and you could use it for a different reason. You can use it for so many things. You can use it to describe relationships, about the positioning in the tray. You can use it to actually just tell a story that's too hard. Or quite often clients start by actually burying everything or setting up battles in the sand. So it just varies all the time. And when you've finished with one story, it probably just evolves into another. I would record a Sandtray while a client is working. I would try not to intrude in any way, but I would be drawing brief sketches of where they position things and write any comments that they actually make during the... So if, like when Taz was telling me about her friendship with her best friend, those comments would be written so that you would have a commentary that goes with it. But at the end of every session, after the client's left, having got permission, I would always take a digital photograph of the final Sandtray for the session. And also, as I did with Taz, during the session you could ask them to do a drawing, because often the drawing is the next stage in the story. They won't always just draw it as it is in the Sandtray. By asking them to draw it, they will actually move that on to the next stage in the story. To record the series of sessions, all my clients have a visual diary, and I would print the photographs and include them in the visual diary with my sketches and any notes taken. The advantage of using a Sandtray for a client would be that often when they sit back and look at the Sandtray and how they've created it, and we can have a discussion around that, is that they can also look at the positions of the figures in the Sandtray, and sometimes it can give them a lot of clarity in their own story. In Sandtray therapy, I would never guide the client.